What's your opinion on tiering Saga? Haven't played it, first and foremost, but it seems cool. Every time people are talking about it in the Kaga era room on the Fireman Discord, I'm kind of like, I wish I played this. I wish I could talk about this because it seems really neat. I know it's like broken beyond belief, like almost anything Kaga makes, but it seems really cool. So I want to make it. Someone help me finding a free way of playing it. I'm not going to talk about what it is. So maybe at some point I'll figure it out. I don't know if I want to record it or not. I like playing new games blindly without people watching, kind of, because it lets me figure stuff out on my own, and without commentary I can focus more on the gameplay. And I don't know how big of an audience there is for me playing tiering Saga. Do you plan on doing more tier lists with the FE character sorter? Yes, definitely. Mangs is kind of running away with my concept, which I'll talk more about in whenever. I know there's a question where I want to delve into this a little bit more, but I will definitely do more videos on that. They're pretty easy to record, they don't take very long, and they don't take much editing, so it's pretty easy request for me to fulfill. And yes, I will do FE5 at some point, of course. If we get an FE4 remake, what villain would you like to have more screen time, developments, aside from the already decent villains, Arvis, Travant, Ishtar, maybe you and for others? Okay. So, like Shadows of Valencia, it was a very pretty game, but it got some things wrong, from what I can tell. Like, I'm not an expert on Shadows of Valencia's content, so I'm not going to delve too deep into it, but it definitely is not without its criticism. That the trust in Falcon part was really dumb, for example. So I am very doubtful on how well they are going to be doing an FE4 remake or even an FE6 remake, so I'm kind of scared of what they would do to my precious FE4. What would like? As for villains, that I would like to have more screen time developments. You named the ones that most people like, or at least that have some depths. I'm gonna say I don't actually like most of these. Not as much as other people. Like, I can see why they at least have more dimensions than one, which is always an improvement in Fire Emblem. Definitely over modern Fire Emblem. But as for other decent villains, I guess Ishtar could do with more lines, because he just kind of popped up as an important guy almost, and then he just died almost straight after his introduction. And you know, other people made a big deal out of it, but really it was hard to really see why he was such a good guy. The same goes for Ishtar, but you asked about, you know, the more unknown ones. You also didn't name Julius. Julius is very, very one-dimensional, which I guess is sort of the point, because he has the whole spirit of Loptus or Loptir stuck inside of him, which changed him. But I would have liked to have seen more of the good guy Julius that Julius said was there before he got spooked by the book, by the spooky book. So I don't know. Maybe they could use memory prisms for that. I'm not sure how much of a fan I am of those memory prisms device. I'm of the opinion you don't need to explain everything. There's other ways to do it than cutscenes and text. But I'm not a literal expert, so take my opinion with a grain of salt here. Basically, don't be too safe, and also don't ruin my canon, please. Thanks. What features, weapons, skills would you like to see make a return in future FE games? As I said, surprise me, please. Please just surprise me, try things out. I know Fates did some experimenting with like debuff weapons and stuff. Keep that up, keep trying stuff out, but please test it a little bit more. Sometimes it's just too broken, you know, apparently. But I shouldn't talk too much about Fate's gameplay because I haven't a clue of what it's like. But as for skills, I want to say, like, in Void Splitter Adventure, there were skills in the GBA engine, and they were pretty annoying to deal with sometimes because they don't show up often in the battle preparation screen or the battle preview window. And having to check stat screens for skills all the time that could screw you over is really annoying. It's annoying to do. It's already annoying for weapons, but it's even more annoying for skills. That's one of the reasons I could never finish Awakening Lunatic. Is repeatedly checking skills is very annoying. Especially if you don't have the symbols memorized, so you keep having to check the description. So I actually wish they calmed down a little bit with the skills and go the route of FE4 and FE5 where they're like present, but they're pretty limited on what characters they're on, mostly on bosses, and maybe set per class. But don't give every enemy a personal skill. That stuff is annoying, and don't give every class like 5 of them, please. but like I'm not very attached to any weapons from previous entries. Like, please keep the warp staff. That thing is fun, I guess. I would like forging to return though. That's a very cool feature that I enjoy. Just don't make it too broken. What's your serious opinion on characters like Sophia, Amelia, Nino, etc.? Character-wise, not unit-wise. Okay, so this is like asking what's your... So you're listing a bunch of like known bad characters, but you want me to... like unit-wise, but you want me to talk about them as characters. But you also said etc. So I'm not sure what other characters I could talk about. It's kind of like a very wide net to cast, a very wide range of people to talk about. So I'll just talk about Sophia, Amelia, Nino. Like Sophia, Amelia, I'm okay with. Like, I'm not very big fans of them or anything. They're not my favorites, not by a long shot, but they're okay. FE6 doesn't really do a whole lot with Sophia, especially outside of support conversations. And I'm not really familiar with support conversations to begin with. Like, I mean, I've read them at some point. I don't remember them very well. But they're okay characters. Amelia too. Nino is an FE7 character, and FE7 ranges from very bad to okay with his characters, and Nino is on my lesser favorite thing. That's all I'm gonna say about her for now. Love your content, man. It gladdens me that your channel is growing. Thank you very much. I have 2 questions. What do you want to see in the next Fire Emblem game? Surprise me. Do something cool. Please don't fan service pander all over the place. Just do Kaga things, I guess. So probably not gonna happen. If you could select the next FE game to remake, remaster, like Shadows of Valencia, which would it be and why? Okay, so I guess I'll rant a little bit here about what I don't want first. Please, for the love of God, don't make an FE6 remake where you try to fuse FE7 into it. And please don't do the same for FE4 and FE5, and don't do the same for FE9 and FE10. Please do not put those games in one game and try to make it work. Please don't make the parents thing where you can marry Lynn and Wrath and get like a different Sue or something. Because all these games have very separate identities. I mean, FE7 is very tied to FE6 to the point where it's like dependent on it. But the other games, they work best separately. Please keep them that way. The gameplay does not need to be merged into one engine. Please don't do that, please. And the parent thing is cringy. And like... FE7 especially is so bad for this because there's very few parent pairs that produce a child, so it's very sandwiched, and it also ignores support options that are like platonical. Like you have to scrap a bunch of supports, I think, to make it work, and that's just really annoying. So please don't do that. Thanks. What I would like, just remake one of those games, do it in a tasteful way. Don't put a bunch of sexy pandering fan service in there. Like people, like women can be sexy, that's fine. You can have them look good, but don't do Camilla. Basically, that's all I'm asking. Don't do Camilla, and actually don't even come close to Camilla. That's all I'm asking. Make the gameplay good. I heard Conquest has good gameplay. Maybe take a leaf out of that book. I don't know. Are there any few characters that you love design-wise, but it's like personality-wise and vice versa? Okay, so I have to think of like good-looking characters that I don't like the personality of. I read a while back, there's a series on the subreddit called The Bonding Blade. It's about FE6 and their supports, like an analysis. And the person, they were analyzing Echidna, and apparently she's kind of a dick. She's kind of a bitch. Well, not really a bitch, but she's like taking advantage of people and stuff to get them to help rebuild the isles and the villages. That was kind of weird. Not a big fan of that, even though Echidna has like the coolest hero design ever. Otherwise, most of the people that I like looks-wise are also really cool personality-wise. I mean, most people look pretty in Fire Emblem, of course. I can't really think of anything else, but Echidna's probably the best example. Outside of FE and Pokemon, what other games do you like to play? Do you like the Zelda series? I like Zelda. I respect its legacy. I've never finished the Zelda game though, but I've played around with it, just never finished one. They were cool, but also pretty difficult. Okay, so I can't find it. I can't find whether I answered this or not. So if you asked a repeated question, you're lucky. I'm going to answer it again. What other games do I like to play? I'm gonna name a bunch of unknown series that are not very well known, I guess, because I grew up on those, and they're pretty old, because I am very old compared to my user base, I think, or at least like 5 years older on average. I looked at my list sometimes. Anyway, I am rambling. Jazz-Rabbit 2 or Jazz-Rabbit in general is a really awesome franchise that I grew up on. A really cool game. It's kind of based on Sonic. It's platforming, but it's really fast-paced, and you shoot things, and you're a rabbit with a bunch of guns. It's awesome. And it has a really, really amazing soundtrack. I might edit some songs in just to make you listen to it. I use them in my background music quite a lot lately because, oh my god, they were so good. Commander Keen is a really old, I think it's like a DOS-based game almost. There's like 7 in the whole Keen series, and they're all, well, the first ones are kind of dumb, like 1, 2, and 3, but 4, 5, and 6, like, those are really good. Go watch the speedruns from AGDQ from Keen 4, 5, and 6. They have very good commentary by a guy whose username escaped me. And they're really awesome, really hard games. You die in one hit all the time, but you can't shoot stuff. You have a pogo stick. And they're like puzzle platformers, kind of. But also with enemies. So, really cool. The Lemmings games, those are really old, but also really fun. They're like puzzle games. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, today I am basically all FE and Pokemon. Like there's nothing else in my games library, really. Outside of memes, why are bases better than growths? If you've already made a video about it, I'd gladly appreciate a link to it. Yeah, people already linked to pitfalls in the comments and where they are. But like in general, you can say that bases are reliable, whereas growths are not. And growths take a very long time to make a big difference, unless the difference is like really huge. Like people, they look at it like a 20% growth compared to a 40% growth, and like the 40% is not just twice as good. It's like 40% is like that bar where people are like, this growth is now acceptable, whereas below that it's like mediocre or even bad. But when you think about it, the difference of 20% in growth, which is a pretty big difference for most people, it's 1 point over 5 levels. And 5 levels is like a fourth of their entire unpromoted or promoted lifespan, and like 1/8 of their whole lifespan. And that's just 1 point. So for most of the game, it's going to be like a 4 or 5 point difference at most. And that's for the later part of it. So compared to a base that's like 3 or 4 points higher, you get so much more out of that. And people rarely look at bases. They're all about the long-term potential. But really, what a unit can do for most of the game is dictated by their bases. Like, if you look at their base from like, if it could range from like 5 to 20 base or something, that's such a huge difference. And that dictates so much more than whether you have like a 20 to a 80% growth or something. So much more. What was your first Fire Emblem game? FE7? I think I answered this. Let me check. Okay, yeah, I did answer this. So I think we're now out of the woods when it comes to repeated questions. Do you like Gaiden? I mean, the answer that comes to mind first is yes. I really like Gaiden and what it tried to do. I mean, the execution and the NES engine and the repeated maps, that shit sucks. The terrain penalties, oh my god, that sucks. But every time I look at Gaiden, every time I think about Gaiden, I'm like, I'm a big fan of what this tried to do, and I'm a big fan of some of the concepts in it. And as a result, I actually played Gaiden 3 times. Like, it's insane. I played Gaiden more often than Shadows of Valencia, which is like 3-0, but still. But Gaiden runs on my toaster, so there's that. And my favorite part of Gaiden is probably like the early game where you have all the villagers and you can promote them to different dudes and just exploring the world a little bit. And, you know, switching between Alma and Celica, like killing off Silk so you can revive her on the other half. Pala Emblem made a Gaiden 0% growth run, which is also really recommended for checking out because, oh my god, it's so interesting. It's like an interesting concept. It's almost more fun to talk about it than to actually play it. But I do think the early game is fun to play when it's like all new. Dev and Danvet has been answered. If you could design next FE, yeah, I pretty much answered this. What do you think of an FE hack in which no stats are above 0 except HP and in some cases luck, and skills, classes, map design are the focus? Ooh, this requires some imagination right here. So basically everyone has 0 stats except so they have some HP and luck, so they can't get critted, I guess, or most of them can't get crit. I mean, map design as a focus is good. Classes and skills as map design are good. But, you know, stats like strength and defense and speed, they are very good at differentiating units. I'm afraid a lot of units would be the same in this kind of thing, or they would have very similar combat at least, because, as I said, I don't really like skills-based emblem, unless it's skills like shove, maybe. But it's almost like you're turning FE more into a puzzle, because it sounds like in this case most people would die in one hit or something. I don't know, this is very hard to imagine, and it depends on many more factors than the ones you've named. But this would be something that Kaga might be willing to try. Like, Kaga might be willing to give up most of the Fire Emblem stats just to make a completely new experience. And this is the kind of experimentation that we need in this series to keep it fresh. So I would like to see someone try it. If not mistaken, you play competitive Pokemon. So my question is, what was a memorable team you used in the past to great, not so great success? Okay, so time for a little bit of history, because I am fucking old. Okay, so before Showdown, there were other simulators that people used to play Pokemon, and one of those was Net Battle. And you played the 3rd generation there mostly, the advanced generation. And I had a team that was kind of like a meme team. It was like Piloswine, because Mamoswine didn't exist yet. So Piloswine, Farfetch'd, Plusle, Gorbis, and 2 other losers that I can't come up with right now. But they were all really bad Pokemon. And my goal was just to try to win with these bad Pokemon in OU. And usually I don't really like hipsters that are like, oh my god, I never use OU Pokemon. I always beat people with like surprises. But it was literally just me trying to see what I could do. And it was so much fun to play with all these super bad Pokemon and just be happy with like a couple of kills. And I did win some battles sometimes, because some of these Pokemon, they could really, like if people didn't handle them properly, didn't have the right counters, sometimes they could actually do good things, but they were very rare, because, you know, the Farfetch, for example, had Sword Stance, Agility, really? I think it was Sword Stance, Agility, no, it was Sword Stance, Substitute, and your Flail, so with a Salak Berry. And Farfetch doesn't even reach the right speed in advance to outspeed everything after a Salak Berry boost. Like, it doesn't reach 264 speed, so it doesn't outspeed Jolteon on Aerodactyl, for instance. And then it also has trouble killing anything, because its attack is so garbage that even with Sword Stance to Flail at 200 base power, it doesn't even kill things like Skarmory or even Magneton, Aerodactyl. It has trouble killing things, but sometimes there were these instances where Farfetch swept an opponent, and they were glorious, let me tell you that. Do you believe Devden and Danvet are the same person? Maybe to meme. I'll just give a more serious-ish answer. Like, they are very, very different in personality. People don't mention this too much, but like Devden is super creepy and weird, and like he scares the hell out of Nephany, while Danvet is just like he's like a loyal, chill knight that just wants to help, and he's like very brash, and he's kind of like a braggart. So they are like, it's like if they were the same person, I'm not saying they are, but if they were the same person, he would have like a severe new personality. It's like he got hit on the head or something. The other question I pretty much answered. Do you use that then as a profile pic because you look like him? No. Or because you have a soft spot for kids? No. I mean, my profile is Danvet, and Danvet is not particularly fond of kids. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate my profile picture? Is that Jenny or Celica? I can't tell. Gaiden out of 10. What are your opinion on the other famous YouTubers, FE YouTubers like Gast, Stevie, Mangs, etc.? Okay, this is the question I was looking for. Stevie, I do not know at all. Sorry, is this Lucky Crit? Is this Lucky Crit? I guess it is. I'm sorry, I have no idea. I'm really sorry. I'll save the best for last. Gast Station, I watched a couple of videos. Like, I wanted to watch Shadows of Valencia being played by someone who was like going through it fast. And Gast, he did that, so I watched some of his stuff. He seems like a genuine dude. He seems nice. He's very passionate about Fire Emblem for sure. Like, I don't agree with all the things he says ever, of course. I know he likes Perry, for example. But I dig his approach to some things. I like that he does support science, which is like something not many people do on YouTube in general, is look at the things that other people aren't looking at. I think that's a big part of why, that's adding to the niche, basically. What are you adding? And this is what Gast adds. He has some depth, so I think that's nice. So genuine personality, chill attitude, and he does some things that other people don't. Okay, so let's talk about Mangs, because that's what people were probably waiting for. So, you know how I say about Gast that he seems like a genuine person on camera, that he's just kind of portraying himself, playing games and talking. Mangs very much has a distinct split between his character on camera and him as a real person. He's said this himself, so this is not just my interpretation, but there's a big difference between how Mangs is on camera when he's portraying himself to his audience, and the real Mangs, who I talk to PMing on Discord or talk to before and after recording. That's a very different person. You know, the real Mangs, he's helpful. He got me a bunch of views for my YouTube channel. I wouldn't be as quote unquote big as I am without his shout outs, and same goes for Don to an extent. And he's also offered to help me get a partnership with the thing he is partnered with. I declined, but it was very nice of him to offer him. So this is pretty different from the in-character Mangs, who is constantly making sexist and racist jokes. He acts stupid, like Mangs Math, imprisons people to play games with him. Very, very different. And this is okay. It's perfectly okay to play a character. But I think what Mangs knows but often overlooks, either that or he doesn't mind it, is he has a very impressionable audience. Most of his subscribers, as far as I know, are like teenagers, and they seem to take the character Mangs at face value and enable this. I say they, but I'm probably talking to you as we speak because we share a huge portion of our viewer base. So Mangs acts the way he does on camera because he knows his audience likes that, and they will enable him in turn, and that's what gets him views. And this is what people like. This is what people want to see. Most of you will call it memes or whatever, but I'm just calling it as I see it. I'll get back into this distinction a bit. So now, to me, YouTube is a creative outlet. I base my channel and a lot of my videos around new ideas, inspiration that I get. I try to do new things with old games and tools. So examples of old games are obviously Fireman and Pokemon games, and then tools are like Nightmare or whatever. Editing the game, making it more difficult, or, you know, putting a bunch of different screens into one, or making educational videos about a fucking video game. New ideas, old tools, constantly trying to find new things. It's a creative outlet, and I think that's the strength of YouTube to do this. So on the subject of creativity, what can we say about Mangs? What things has Mangs created that are like unique, and, you know, what has he created? Well, he created character spotlights. Not the most original idea in the world, but his approach to it is pretty fresh, and they are pretty wide. They encompass a lot of facets about every character. So those are pretty cool. He creates memes, but those are mostly just repeating lines until they stick with the audience, and just saying them a lot is what turns them into memes, basically. They don't necessarily have to be funny, although usually they are funny at first. But it seems more like you're beating everyone over the head with the same old line until people find them funny. And this is totally fine. This is what he and his audience enjoy. So whatever, cool. But then there's some ideas that he took. One of them was Pick My Edits, which he took from me from a while. He didn't know it was mine until later. I asked for credit for it, because that's my policy when it comes to my ideas. Is all you gotta do to use them is ask me, give me credit, and don't make money off it. So now he has PMEs. He's done like 3 of them by now, and he has given me credit for it. So those are fine. But it does set in a thing that's even more evident about the next subject, and that's what's it called? The tier list sorter, the thing from Tumblr. I made like one video of it for FE8, and then the next day there was one for FE6, and then he made one a couple days later by FE7, and I'm sure that in a couple of days there will be like 10 of them up before I have the chance to make more. And, you know, again, using my ideas is fine. Just give me credit, which he did in the first video. He didn't ask, though, which kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And now in the second video, he hasn't even given me credit anymore. People are bringing it up in the comments sometimes, but mostly they're just enjoying the content and Mangs memes and stuff. And that's like, it says a lot about your creativity if you're not able to come up with your own original ideas. You have to take mine, and you have to do it for multiple videos, and you're not, for some reason, forgetting or not willing to give me credit for them. And that kind of rubs me the wrong way. He didn't need to do that. I think he could have handled that better. And I told him pretty much as much, not in as many words, but I basically said, dude, you could have at least asked on Discord. So we've kind of handled it, but I just wanted to put it out in a more formal, concise way, because I had to think about what exactly annoyed me about it for a bit. So yeah, Mangs in a nutshell. He's a good person, but some of the creative choices in his content I find, I wouldn't say objectionable, but a little strange, and I would not do things the same way he would. And, you know, his audience doesn't care too much, I think. That's the wrong way to put it. But basically his audience enables him in the way to do it. That's another thing I wanted to say is the way he went about taking my idea and then going in the comments like, hey guys, what idea should I take from Mangs next? What if he took like Fireman Pitfalls? Would people react to that the same way? I gotta wonder. What if he just played multiple Fireman games at the same time? Would people be like, yeah, Mangs, you're so funny. Taking ideas from Mekkah, haha, how funny. But at that point, you're no longer talking about character Mangs. This is something real Mangs did. So, yeah. Judge that how you will, but I'm not a big fan of that method. Next one. Let's just move on. Question, what do you think about the Tellius series of games in comparison to the rest of the games? They were poorly marketed. That sucked. That's why they're so rare now. They're pretty good overall. Path of Radiance more so than Radiant Dawn. Path of Radiance is like kind of like a traditional Fire Emblem game done right, with a bit of experimentation and new features that are really cool. And Radiant Dawn is being really ambitious about a game with the grand scale of the conflict and the large amount of chapters, characters, maps. And it was executed all right. The gameplay, I think, for both games leaves something to be desired. Path of Radiance is too easy, whereas Radiant Dawn, it's got very lopsided map design. But there are some chapters in there I really like, and there are some chapters I didn't really like. But overall, they're like a good portion of the Fire Emblem games for sure. Path of Radiance more so than Radiant Dawn. I wish Path of Radiance wasn't so easy. If you had the chance to add a single feature in an FE game, what would this be? Shove in every fucking game ever. Which FE game is your favorite and which one you dislike the most? I already talked about my favorite, Thracia. My least favorite, right now, it's probably FE7 as my least favorite, but I dislike Fates Revelations more than FE7, but I dislike both of them for different reasons. What's your favorite map? Ooh, it's gonna sound strange, but I like the Manster chapters a lot from FE5, particularly 4, 4X, and 5 to a lesser extent, but then 6 and 7, they capture the feelings that the music and the gameplay and the characters give you. They're all a really good combined package. I like FE4 chapter 3 a lot. There's not too much backtracking in it for an FE4 chapter. And the fact that both your mounted and your unmounted units get to do different things is pretty cool. I like FE7's Dragon's Gate. That's also like the only one of the few maps in FE7 that I really like, but it's pretty cool. Lots of different objectives, different directions to go, different purposes. I like a lot of maps. Will you play FE Switch? I don't have a Switch, so probably not, but a friend of mine might get it, and then I'll play it along with him. Maybe. It depends. It also depends on the marketing, of course. If it looks like it's just Fates version 2.0, then no. We ever consider doing a randomized Fire Emblem Let's Play in the future? I think randomizers are pretty funny, but I've kind of seen it all at this point. Not that I've played so much, but I've seen like a ton of screenshots of people playing them. What I actually did once, and I didn't record it, was I S-ranked an FE7 randomizer. That was pretty funny. I think I did in Hector normal mode though. But I don't think I'm gonna Let's Play a randomizer, to be honest, because the class system in FE is very imbalanced. Some classes just have very high bases, some have very low bases, and the same goes for characters. So, for example, a character like FE7 Osman has very high personal basis, whereas a class like Mage has very low class basis. So if you combine those character traits and class traits, you get very lopsided balance. And I know lopsided is like the point of a randomizer, but I kind of feel like I already foresee how any character would be as any class. So there's not much of a surprise left in it for me. And yes, I will do a Fire Emblem tier list like the one you did for FE8 for all our Fire Emblem games, or at least the ones you feel comfortable doing. Yeah, eventually I will do that. Do you think it's worth playing through FE1 plus 3 as well as FE11 plus 12, or just stick to the remakes? I see this question quite a few times. I would not play FE1 unless it's for the super nostalgia bit, or you just want to see the origins. I tried playing FE1, but I just can't get through it. It's just kind of clunky. And I say this as someone who's played Gaiden 3 times. FE3, on the other hand, Book 1 is like the same as FE1 and Shadow Dragon. I would skip that. But Book 2, I think, was a very good experience. It's very different from FE12. I would definitely play both of the remakes. But I would also consider playing FE3 Book 2. I think it's pretty fun to play. Why do you subject yourself to Mangs' shitty LPs? Do you find them entertaining because he's funny or because he's not the best? Nothing against him. I like Mangs, but he's pretty bad. You know, I guess that's one question I haven't really answered. Why am I still in these LPs? Contrary to the character portraying, I actually like being there because it's like a way for me to unwind. I just get to sit there, watch him make dumb mistakes, and give him a bad time about it. I don't actually have to come up with pro strats on my own. I do when I actually have to play. Sometimes I come up with good ideas anyway. But mostly it's just a way for me to unwind and just, it's like hanging out with someone. Will you make a video comprised of LTC tips? I really would like help on improving my skills, perhaps a multi-episode series like Pitfalls. I think you are one of the most knowledgeable person in FE and would like to hear some of your advice. Wow, this is also flattering. I'm not the best LTCer ever, but I can provide some general tips, I guess. Not being able to LTC is not exactly a pitfall. So maybe it's not the best in pitfalls. I know I want to do a certain video on like LTC contexts. I know that's like a very abstract term. You'll see what I mean when it comes out. But I will probably make something you like at some point. And that's like the most vague thing possible. What do you think of Fire Emblem persons versus person? I know why it doesn't work, but do you think there are ways to balance it to make it an enjoyable experience? Yeah. See, you kind of answered your own questions. Are there ways to balance it to make it a more enjoyable experience? I think Fire Emblem would probably profit more from co-op than player versus player. I think co-op Fire Emblem is a very interesting idea, but that's just something I came up with on the fly. I used to play Fire Emblem Tactical something on FE Planet. It's actually what made my, like, this is kind of a tangent, but it's fun to tell. So one day, that guy that made FE Planet made like a PvP Fire Emblem simulator, and it was so popular, even on Smogon, that for like the next 24 hours, the IRC channel that every Smogoner hung out on was like flooded with Fire Emblem, and it was so great. It was like the biggest boom in Fire Emblem that I've seen until like Awakening came out, and it was awesome. And to this day, I still use the channel to talk to my friend Rissa, because, you know, we both like IRC, I guess. But yeah, Fire Emblem PvP, while I was playing on that FVTO, I forgot what the full name was, Tactical something. But the reason it didn't work is people would obviously camp out against each other, because whoever made the first move would generally lose, because weapon triangle and the defense versus resistance stat just makes such a big difference on whether you're on the offense or the defense. And I don't think there's a really way to fix that. So you'd have to change like the whole core of Fire Emblem, so maybe Saga can come up with a way. Visually speaking, what do you think is the best the series has looked, as in the overall armor, character, aesthetic each game has tried to go for, since each game tends to change its visuals each time? What about the worst? I like the look of the NES, not the NES, the SNES games. They're kind of, I mean, every animation in Fire Emblem gets kind of repetitive, so that's why I usually play with them off. But I think the SNES and the Tellius games did this really well. And for the worst, most people don't like Shadow Dragons. I'm actually going to vote for Awake of Fates, though, because bias. No, not exactly bias, but like boob armor and shit. That's dumb. Chaining off that, what style would you want the next FE to go for? Be similar to a previous game, try to go for a new art direction, or maybe possibly go for more realistic looking characters? Honestly, more Radiant Dawn style things or Path of Radiant style things would be my preference, but they shouldn't limit themselves to a style. Rather, they should just go for a certain vision and go with it. If that's the Wake of Fate's vision, so be it. But they shouldn't limit themselves, basically, is what I want. Just do whatever you think is best, but don't try to pander. Just do something of your own instead of just trying to serve all the fans. Have you played of any games in the Etrian Odyssey series? It's somewhat a niche dungeon crawling turn-based JRPG that's pretty difficult. I highly recommend it to everyone. As the more people play it, it's more likely the series doesn't end after the next and last game on the 3DS. I haven't. Sorry, I haven't. What is your thought on the evolution of Fire Emblem? What are its different currents? How do you define a post-Awakening game, a post-Kaga game, and a Kaga game? I pretty much went over this. But basically, Kaga games are him trying to tell a story, and post-Kaga games are like trying to emulate the Kaga stories. Which hacks have you played and which ones did you prefer? I've played The Last Promise 2 times, in fact. I've played some Mage Knight 404 hacks. I played some of the hacks on the Serenus Forest hacks page. The Encryption 21, I think, which is really bad. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but unless you're masochistic or something, because that one is really whack. But let's see, what else have I played? I've played the Red Moon Night thing. I forgot what it's called. Midnight Sun, the FE8 one. That was pretty good. I played some Decay of the Fang, not too much. Decay of the Fang is the FE7 sequel one, right? Yeah, I played that. And there was another Dream of 5. Didn't really like that one too much. So there you have it. That's the hacks I played, besides the ones that I made, of course. Let's see, I'm going to skip some that I already saw. If you were to go about improving archers, other than the obvious giving them 2 range, what would you do? There's some games where bows are pretty good. It's just that archers always get shitty stats, and then if they promote the sniper, or if you get a pre-promote sniper, they're actually pretty good. FE6 is a good example. The early game archers like Dorothy and Bolt are horrible, but Klein and Gran are really good. The answer is probably just giving the early game archers better stats or better movements. It also helps if the enemies are threatening to the point where you don't want to take counters from them. This is why they're better in Shadow Dragon than most other games, and the same goes for FE12. So if you want to improve archers, look at those games. But things about the DS games is like they give archers 5 move and movement penalties as if they're armor knights, which is pretty dumb. You don't need to nerf them any further. So just make them equal to other foot units and then make the enemies threatening. Have you played Ace Attorney? Nope, I have not, and don't really want to. Will you ever do a no growth, no XP Pokemon playthrough? Any Pokemon game of your choice, of course. I know Dundon did one of these, I think Pokemon White. It was interesting and it seems fun to map out, but I like leveling up too much in Pokemon. Maybe at some point, but add it to the long list of things that I want to do. What is your top 8 FE games? This is really long. If I had to rank them, maybe I'll do like a character sorter of Fire Emblem games at some point. Do I play Final Fantasy? Nope. I have tried Final Fantasy Tactics something, but it's been so long I never finished it. And, maybe at some point I will. Add it to the list. What is the worst fictional story you ever had the displeasure or ironic pleasure of experiencing? Only one thing comes to mind. In the Smogon community, there was this really weird guy. Actually, this was like more like the IGN community than the Smogon community. There was someone who wrote like an erotic fan fiction of me and a couple of other high-profile Smogon people, and that was pretty disturbing. How's Dundon151 doing? As I said, he's really busy. I haven't talked to him in ages, but if I left him a message on Skype, he would probably message me back. I saw him post on the Fireman subreddit once or twice. The only thing I forgot to mention is not only does he have little free time, but he also spends most of it playing Pokemon Go. What changes could be made to make desert maps more bearable, other than removing them? Maybe change the move penalty to an avoid penalty instead? Yeah, that's one way to go about it, but that kind of ruins the point they're trying to do with desert maps. I'm okay with nerfing horse units for a map, but I would leave foot units alone. I think Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn did a little bit better than most games here. They have like more types of units that can cross the desert faster. Thieves have like no penalty, mages, flyers, lagoos. That works pretty well. You can also do the FE4 thing, where you have like a path going through the desert with desert tiles alternated by road tiles, so you go faster. FE8 also kind of does this. It gives like a portion of the desert map that has like no desert, so your reverse units can work there. So those are some ways to do it. What do you think about Fire Emblem 8? Do you think it's worse than FE6 and FE7? Do you like the changes it made, like the overworld and the overworld shops? I like FE8 just fine. It's a little bit repetitive. It's a shorter game than FE7 and FE6, so that's why it has like less different things. You also kind of want to use the same units over and over again, I feel, because there's very few really good units, and the units that are like below that tier are like viable, but they feel pointless near the end of the game. Like Wyvern Knights are so much better than the rest, and then there's like 2 Paladins that are super broken, like Franz and Seth, and then everyone below them is like mediocre movement, and their combat doesn't really add too much. Some maps are really movement heavy, but I still think it's a better game than FE7. I think FE6 is a better designed game, but for playing casually, I think FE8 is more fun than FE6. Overworld map I'm mixed on. It's nice to take a break, and I really like being able to buy weapons between maps, but at the same time, they should use the mechanic more often where you cannot do that. This is particularly annoying or dumb in Awakening, where they have to run away from a castle or something, but you can still play the chapter whenever you like and still go shopping in between. That breaks the narrative, but FE8 isn't as guilty of that as Awakening, because there are some maps where they don't let you do the between map things.